You know, some people say that a dog is man's best friend, and others say that a tax researcher's best friend is tax research databases, right, Aria? Right, Zoro? Well, we're going to talk about some more tax research databases, include CCH, BNA, Bloomberg, and some others. Really what it comes down to is what's your favorite tax research database, and it's hard to decide, just like choosing between my two favorite dogs here, Aria and Zoro. So let's go ahead and let's jump into the material. CCH Commercial Tax Research Service. In this video, we're going to be focusing on CCH and the tax research database that CCH offers. We're also going to talk about some other tax research databases beyond CCH and Checkpoint. Now, I do have a video that focuses on Checkpoint. I recommend that you watch that video first because most tax practitioners, whether you're an accountant, an attorney, that's the most common tax research database. CCH is also common as well, and there's other ones, especially if you're an attorney. Westlaw, Lexis, also BNA, Bloomberg is very popular, but that Checkpoint is really the baseline video I have, so make sure you watch that. Okay, let's go ahead, and we're going to talk about CCH first, and then we're going to do a tutorial going through the software of CCH, and then we're going to look at some other research databases just doing tutorials. So here is the learning objectives of the presentation. Again, the slides, they're focusing on the CCH information in this video. And if you're taking my class, if you're taking my tax research class, I'm just going to be testing you on this module, on this topic, just on the information on the slides related to CCH. Again, we're going to have a test drive of the CCH tax research software later on. We're also going to look at Bloomberg BNA. We're also going to look at Westlaw. I'm not going to test you on Bloomberg BNA. I'm not going to test you on Westlaw. It's just to help you understand, so when you go and practice, you have an idea of what these things look like. And again, the baseline really comes from Checkpoint. Checkpoint in my tax research class, and again, in most tax professionals' careers, that's the most commonly used platform because it's just, think about it like a search engine online. There's just some search engines that a lot of people prefer over others. Checkpoint is one of those. They all cost money. And Checkpoint actually is one of the more expensive tax research databases compared to CCH and others. So keep that in mind, okay? So learning objectives of the slides, we're going to go through and we're going to explain the benefits of using a commercial tax database over a free database. And by the way, I mentioned earlier that it's important you watch the video on Checkpoint, going through Checkpoint, that tax research database. You're going to see some overlap of concepts there. Understand what is the CCH Tax Research Service. We're going to talk about that. List four of CCH Tax Research's main editorial source materials and explain what is located in each. Describe why the CCH Citator is so important to a researcher and understand the technical terminology of the CCH Citator. And finally, understand the 4 search methods that a tax researcher can use to do research in CCH tax research and explain the process a tax researcher will conduct for each of these methods. And then we're also going to do a test drive of the CCH tax research software along with some other softwares specifically. So we're going to look at CCH. We're going to look at Bloomberg BNA, which you should just be called BNA. And we're also going to look at Westlaw, which these are very, very powerful tax research services. And Westlaw even covers all legal aspects. So the first topic, should a tax professional use a commercial or tax-free service? Well, the idea here is you've got free services and you've got commercial services. The biggest drawback of a commercial service is, of course, as we all know, it costs money. Okay, so the benefit of a commercial tax service, the idea now is, well, what are the benefits that a commercial tax service can provide over a free tax service? Because you do have free tax services out there, and there are times that a tax practitioner, you can use free tax services, and it works fine for what you're doing. So the benefits of the commercial tax service, the first one, and the main one that you hear most people say, the near immediate updating of materials when there are changes in the tax law. As we all know, tax changes frequently, and if you're relying on free tax services online, they might take months before they get updated, especially if you're dealing with governmental sources, governmental websites. They might take months before the law has been updated. And as we know, again, the tax law changes frequently. You want a service that's going to be updated daily, and that's what happens in commercial tax services like CCH and Checkpoint. Also, commercial tax services offer certain persuasive authority that cannot be accessed through free services. And there's lots of different ones. Some examples include tax court summary opinions from the small court. Okay, so that's an example of a type of judicial opinion that you usually can't access, or you can't at least access historically all of those. You might be able to get them on the U.S. Tax Court website, but you can get that on the commercial tax services. They provide that. And certain IRS pronouncements are not available on the IRS website or online. You have to get them through these commercial tax services because they've gone through the Freedom of Information Act process, which could be a long process. In addition, another benefit, they offer editorial commentary on primary and secondary tax law sources. In the checkpoint video and also in this video, I'm going to be pointing out that there's different flagship and other editorial services provided by CCH, by Checkpoint, and they are extremely helpful. In the Checkpoint video, I showed you how to do some research with our issue and look at the federal tax coordinator and how it really helped significantly. Next one, helpful to a practitioner, also guides tax professional to further research through related information. So the idea is that if you're going online and looking for primary sources online through free tax services, you're really just going right to the source, right to that thing. But with respect to the commercial tax services, you can do the same thing, but you're also going to find related information tabs and other links through the material that you wouldn't be able to have through the free services. So it's not intertwined, interlinked like it is. The free services aren't intertwined, interlinked like they are in the commercial tax services. That's a huge benefit. And finally, customization. Again, it costs money, right? Commercial tax services, they cost money, but you can also customize. They're very flexible in terms of what services are provided. And I'm going to point out later on that with respect to the CCH access I have at my university, because again, in practice, I really rely on Westlaw and Checkpoint. You're going to see that mine is quite limited. Mine's quite limited, and really I only have access to the primary sources, not much editorial content. So you can actually customize, and that could help you in terms of not breaking the bank, not breaking your piggy bank open and having to get all that money. So it really is helpful because there's just so many different items that these commercial tax services that they make available, that if money is the biggest concern, you can always work with them and see what you can afford and what's important for your practice. All right, so let's talk about the background or overview of CCH Tax Research Service. Again, you're going to see it's very similar to Checkpoint. And that's the reason why I structured this presentation, and I recommended you watch the Checkpoint video first. You're going to see it's very similar, the way I have the slides set up, the ideas. So CCH Tax Research Overview. It's a commercial tax and accounting research service. So it provides not just tax, it provides non-tax services such as FASB codifications and SEC materials and other things, so Securities Exchange Commission materials. It provides lots of different things. The key is that yes, we're talking about it from a tax research standpoint, but it's not just tax. Now, there are 4 search methods available in CCH Tax Research, just like in Checkpoint, and they are the keyword search, the content search, the index search, and the citation search. I'm going to talk more about those in the slides later on. Also, we're going to look at those later on in the CCH test drive of the software. CCH Tax Research Database is organized to facilitate quick access to a database. I mentioned earlier that commercial tax services, one of the benefits is the organization, the intertwinedness of the primary and secondary sources. Yes, and just like in Checkpoint, you're going to see CCH, while it's organized a little bit, or it is organized differently, it has the same items, the same functions, the same intertwined abilities, and it's all about making things organized for the end user to make things more efficient and effective. That's what it's all about, efficiency and effective research when you are doing research and you have a tight time budget to do something. Now, again, it's updated daily, so these websites, and when you're watching this video, you might notice that the format of a specific site has changed, but the ideas are still the same. The structure, really, the underlying structure and theory of the product is still the same. You start off on a home screen, leads to a search screen. Then you have the 4 search methods. That's really, and I should say for CCH, the home screen really it does have the search screen on it, I should say. It doesn't lead to. That's more like Checkpoint. It actually is the search screen, and it also leads to the 4 methods. There's also different practice areas that you can go to. You can go to federal tax, state tax, estate planning international, different practice areas depending on what type of tax professional you are. Okay, so let's talk about the four major CCH tax research, the editorial materials. And when I talk about this, I'm also going to put them in comparison to what we have in Checkpoint, because as I promised in the Checkpoint video, I said CCH, they have their equivalent, and Checkpoint, they have theirs. So I want you to know that. And if you're taking my class, I guarantee you will be tested on understanding these things, because one thing is that in practice, when you go to certain firms, you might have access to both CCH and Checkpoint, both of those. A lot of the big accounting firms, big law firms, they have access to all the different databases. They've just got so much money and resources, they're able to get this for the entire firm. Now, if you're a smaller firm or mid-sized firm, you might not have access. You might just have Checkpoint. You might have CCH. Well, if you have both, or if you have one or the other, and let's say you've been focusing in your tax research class on Checkpoint, but you go to a firm that uses CCH. Well, your supervisor, they might ask you, hey, I want you to find a tax research consultant portfolio or paragraph on a specific topic. And you're like, huh? What's that? I don't know what that is, because you learn Checkpoint. So if you understand, hey, tax research consultant is the equivalent of the federal tax coordinator in Checkpoint, which they're very, very similar. They're both index searches. Then you understand, okay, yeah, I'm in your mind, you say, okay, I understand what they're saying. I'm very familiar with the federal tax coordinator, so I can easily do this. And that's very similar to the idea here. So each of these four major tax research editorial materials that CCH has, there's the equivalent in Checkpoint. And there's other tax research databases out there, and they have their equivalents as well. So in CCH, there's two flagships. There's the Tax Research Consultant and the U.S. Master Tax Guide. Let's start with the Tax Research Consultant. This is the equivalent to the Federal Tax Coordinator. It analyzes the Internal Revenue Code and all important federal tax legislation, regulation, cases, and rulings. It's an index-based search, which means it breaks it down by it's topical. I should say index as in it's topical. So it breaks it down by subject matter, by topics. That's what I meant by index type. It's not annotative, it's topical, it's not annotative. And then it's equivalent to the Federal Tax Coordinator and Checkpoint. Next, we have the U.S. Master Tax Guide, which is another flagship of CCH, and that's equivalent to the Federal Tax Handbook in Checkpoint. And basically, it's not as exhaustive and comprehensive as the Tax Research Consultant. It's an accurate and easy to use reference for day-to-day tax questions on the most current tax years. So the idea is that a lot of practitioners, they use both of these in conjunction with one another. They go to the Tax Research Consultant to look at things more comprehensively and more detail. And then the U.S. Master Tax Guide is more, okay, they actually publish a hard copy of this, and it's quite small, and it's kind of like just a quick reference guide if you're a tax professional for day-to-day tax questions. It's more summarized. So this is much more summarized, and the Tax Research Consultant is much more comprehensive. That's the idea. And it's the same analogy to Federal Tax Coordinator and Federal Tax Handbook and Checkpoint. That's the same idea there. Okay, the next one's a CITATOR, which, hey, in Checkpoint, it's the same name as well, the CITATOR. So the CITATOR notes specific relationships between certain authorities like cases, such as if a case has been overruled by another case. And it does more than just cases. It does revenue rulings, rev procs. It does other types of authorities beyond cases. It also tracks an issue individually, allowing the practitioner to follow the key issues of the case. The CITATOR is integrated within CCH Tax Research to allow you to site check all cases quickly and to see all activity for a given case in one place. So again, in Checkpoint, it's also called the CITATOR. And then finally, our last of the four major CCH Tax Research editorial source materials is the Standard Federal Tax Reporter, which is the equivalent in Checkpoint to the United States Tax Reporter. Now, this is a annotative approach, which means it's organized by Internal Revenue Code section, and it's a comprehensive and up-to-date source of federal tax law, regulations, committee reports, cases, rulings, explanations, and federal forms. It's annotations organized by both code sections and legal issues, and they cite widely known case reporters. So the idea here is this Standard Federal Tax Reporter, it's similar to the USTR, the United States Tax Reporter and Checkpoint, and it is the annotative approach that CCH uses. All right, let's talk about the CITATOR. That was our third of the four And CITATOR, always important to go in much more depth. So you're going to see, again, a lot of similarities to the checkpoint discussion we had on this topic. What is a CITATOR? It's a tool through which a researcher can learn the history of a legal source of primary authority and evaluate the strength of its holdings. So again, it looks at cases, it looks at revenue rulings, rev procs. It follows the thread through subsequent sources and summarizes where threads lead and what they mean. So it goes through a long line of what exactly with respect to a case, cases before it, cases, both before and after in terms of the line. It also looks at cases that might have cited the case and whatnot. Why is the CITATOR used? Well, again, looking at free tax research databases or free tax research services versus commercial, it's all about making sure you keep up with the law. So determine how later legal developments have impacted all sources of primary authority that are relevant to the client's tax issue. So you're able to, pull up a case and ask, is this still relevant law? Are there any cases that have overruled it or distinguished it or something? So tax law, as we know, it's constantly being revised by legislation and the courts and executive power through IRS and Treasury. Regulations are proposed, finalized, withdrawn, and administrative rulings are issued, modified, superseded, revoked, and made obsolete by tax law revisions. Judicial cases, when they're decided in a lower court, they may be appealed and overruled by a future court, or they might be affirmed, or another case overrules an area of law. So, you have to keep in mind all these different things. The main thing is that a CITATOR helps keep track of the law because, again, as we know, tax law changes so frequently. Let's talk about terminology. So the terminology in the CCH CITATOR is not as exhaustive as it is you're going to see in other research databases, including Checkpoint. So, of course, we've got the cited case and we have the citing case. So the cited case is the actual case that another case is referring to. Okay? So, for example, the Glenshaw Glass case, which is a case that I've talked about in other tax research videos that I have. That's a case that helps define gross income looking at 3 tests. Well, future cases, they cite to Glenshaw Glass. So Glenshaw Glass would be an example of the cited case. The future cases that cite Glenshaw Glass, they are the citing case. They will contain the name of the cited case and where it can be found. This is also called the citation. So the citation would be the actual citation to Glenshaw Glass. So in my example, Glenshaw Glass, Supreme Court decision, that's what laid down the 3-part definition for defining gross income. It's actually Commissioner versus Glenshaw Glass. That's the actual citation. And then I don't know the U.S. Supreme Court citation offhand. I talk about it so much, I probably should have it memorized. But it's Commissioner versus Glenshaw Glass. And the idea is that we're talking about all future cases that cite Glenshaw Glass in the future opinions to rely on that precedent, on those rules. So Glenshaw Glass will be the cited case in these citing case opinions, and then Glenshaw Glass, the citation for Glenshaw Glass is the opinion. That's the citation. Now with Checkpoint and other research databases, the citators actually cited, they say cited favorably, citing distinguished. They talk about how it's been cited and whatnot. CCH isn't as powerful in that regard. It doesn't go as in depth. That's one limitation. But you still have a CCH CITATOR, which still does provide if it's up-to-date law. So I will say that the CCH CITATOR is it's not as powerful as other citators. Again, Checkpoint, Westlaw, Lexis, with the Shepherd service and Lexis. I will say it's not as powerful. It's still useful, it's still relevant, and still should be used. Okay, we're going to finish off our slides talking about the 4 search methods available in CCH Tax Research. And I'm going to go through these when we actually look at the software. I'm going to show you where you would find these different 4 searches. So let's start with the most common, the keyword search. And keyword searches, if you are a brand new tax attorney or tax accountant or tax professional, that's the most likely of the 4 types of searches you would use. I'll tell you what's the most unlikely, but a keyword search is the most likely, and it's also the most likely even if you are a tax professional, because it's the most used, just because look at search engines online and the way that we search stuff through the internet. They use keyword searches. So there's really a 4-step process to do a keyword search. Step 1 is to determine the keyword or keywords to search, or the phrase, or whatever you're trying to do. Now, this is usually the biggest challenge because it's very important you identify the proper keywords, because being too limited or too much that would obviously affect your results and give you either too many hits or not narrow enough or not enough hits. That's the idea. So step 1, determine the keywords to search. Step 2, select the database to search. You're going to have both primary sources and secondary sources available in CCH. We talked about some of those secondary sources already. You've got the Tax Research Consultant, you've got the U.S. Master Tax Guide, you've got the Standard Federal Tax Reporter. So those are some examples of secondary sources. Again, you have all the primary sources you can search as well, just like in Checkpoint. Again, you're going to see when we go through the test drive of the software, very similar in terms of what you can do in Checkpoint, just the organization is a little bit different. One thing to note, though, is I do want to break down annotated tax services and topical or index type searches. So annotated searches, like an example is the Standard Federal Tax Reporter, SFTR, Standard Federal Tax Reporter for CCH. They're organized by Internal Revenue Code section number. They're called compilations as they compile an editor's explanation and evaluation. They provide annotations, which are brief summaries of related court cases and administrative rulings. The topical tax services, which the Tax Research Consultant and the U.S. Master Tax Guide are examples of topical tax services. These are they're broken down by topics. And the idea there is you can do index searches like this. It's like an encyclopedia approach. You got the topics listed alphabetically. You go through. It's not broken. It's not listed by code section or organized by code section. It's listed by the actual topic itself. And again, that's the U.S. Master Tax Guide as well. The Tax Research Consultant and U.S. Master Tax Guide, both of them are topical in nature, and they're organized by subject matter. The materials follow logical threads connecting non-contiguous and code sections. So it's not, code section 1, 2, 3 in that order like it is annotated. It's, code sections all over the place, but the topics are connected in a way. And electronic services offer current updated information. Again, all this stuff gets updated daily. So step 3, again, step 1 and step 2. Step 1, keyword. Step 2, select database. Step 3, you can either search on just the regular search, or you can go through the advanced search and you can look through synonyms and whatnot. Now with Checkpoint, you've got the intuitive search and you've got terms and connectors, or the natural language search as we call it for the intuitive search. And the idea there is CCH has something similar, but it's broken down a little bit differently. One thing is, if you go through the advanced search, you get to see some of these options and how it works. It talks to you about the Boolean logic and the proximity connectors, specific connectors. But you also get to see the synonyms that can be used and whatnot. So it's not as you don't just have like the two little options. It's a little bit more, again, it's advanced search. So it's a little bit more specific than that. Also, we have something like that in Westlaw, which I'll show you how that works when we go through the Westlaw part of the test drive. And finally, you're actually going to go ahead and search. And then when you get your results, if you're not happy with what you have, step 4 is to refine the search for fewer and or better results until the applicable authority is found. You can refine keywords and terms used. You can select different databases. Okay. And let's finish strong by talking about the other 3 search methods. Again, the keyword search we just went through, that's the most popular, most common. We also have the index search, the content search, and the citation search. So an index search is basically a topical search. The idea is that it's an encyclopedia type approach where you're going through a list of topics just out there, and it's alphabetically organized like an encyclopedia, and then it specifically gives you the law and analysis, editorial analysis for those respective topics, for that respective area. So it's like a subject matter area. So it's encyclopedia type approach with information broken down by topic. The advantage is that the indexer's expertise can provide researcher with the effective tax terms for later keyword. So by doing an index type search, it can help guide you with finding keywords that you can do in a keyword search. So you can do an index search and then go back to a keyword search, and can search primary or secondary sources. Again, usually we start with a secondary source like a Tax Research Consultant in CCH or U.S. Master Tax Guide in CCH. And Checkpoint, in our video that we had, we actually did the Federal Tax Coordinator, and we saw that helped significantly with what the search we were doing. The next type of search is the content search. The content search is the most unlikely search to use if you're a new tax professional, because it's all about going through the table of contents of a specific authority, primary, secondary, and the table of contents is not broken down alphabetically. It's more broken down by chronologically by the structure of the primary, secondary authority. So if you're looking at the Internal Revenue Code, it's going to go by section 1, 2, 3, and so on, by subchapter, by part, whatnot. It's not going to be broken and organized by subject matter and topic and whatnot. Now, it's appropriate if a researcher has a reasonably good idea of the area of tax law, like, hey, I'm dealing with a partnership tax issue, so I know the 700s, code section 700 is where I need to look. That's kind of the idea. It may be difficult for a new researcher as it focuses on the structure of authority. Again, if you're dealing with partnership, that's in subchapter K of the income tax area of specifically of the Internal Revenue Code. So again, if you have that knowledge already, then and you know that your fact pattern deals with a partnership tax issue, it might help you because you're able to cover all bases by looking at the entire subchapter K, all the 700 code sections, the 700 sections. I'm sorry, not 700 sections. The sections that start with 700, right? 701 to 799, and the idea there is that not all of those will be utilized by a number, but you get the point that you get to cover all bases, look at all code sections just to cover everything. Therefore, prior knowledge of an area of tax law may be extremely important. Yes. Again, this is the most unlikely of the searches for a new tax researcher to start with, but who knows? It's possible. You might be given some guidance by your supervisor. Finally, a citation search. Citation search can be used if you know a citation. The most common way you would start this is if, again, you're given a supervisor gives you a fact pattern. Almost never this happens with a client. It's usually a supervisor gives you a fact pattern. They say, hey, I need you to research this. I know that this case is going to for sure 100% be applicable, and you can put in that case name or that revenue ruling or rev proc or regulation, and it might be able through the related information tabs in CCH to guide you to a specific area. And we saw that in the checkpoint that it helps. It helps significantly. Now, one thing to note is that in the toolbars, and I'll show you this in the test drive, the toolbars in CCH, you're going to see an item for citations, and I don't have it, but there's also CITATOR. I'll talk about that. And those are two different things. Citations, that link is where you get this, where you get the citation search. The CITATOR link, that's where you actually can use the CITATOR to tell you whether the law is good or not of a specific case or authority, a revenue ruling, rev proc, regulation, whatever it is. So just keep that in mind if you're using CCH. Okay, so now let's go ahead. Let's look at CCH. Let's do a test drive going through these 4 different search methods, taking a look at what it looks like. Again, if you haven't watched the checkpoint video, watch that because I like to explain it to tax professionals when you're first learning about these tax research databases. Take a look at the differences between checkpoint, between CCH. We're also going to look after we take a look at CCH. We're going to take a look at Bloomberg BNA. I'm going to show you some of the of why that might be helpful to a tax professional, some areas of that, as well as I'm also going to show you Westlaw. So if you do go into law practice, if you're a tax attorney, that's usually what you use, Westlaw or Lexis, because they're just so powerful all across the board of all areas of law. And that's usually what we use with respect to if you're an attorney. So let's go ahead now. Let's take a look at those different softwares. So we have 3 different databases to look at here. We're going to start with CCH Tax Research first. Now, this has taken many names over the years. At the time of this video, it's called CCH and Teleconnect. You can see Wolters Kluwer, which is the company that owns CCH. The idea is, so Wolters Kluwer is like the equivalent of Thomson Reuters for Checkpoint, and so there's a parent company. And Teleconnect, again, that's the name. It's been Answer Connect. It's changed names so much what their research platform is. I just call it the CCH Tax Research Service. So this is what it looks like when you go into the home screen, and basically it's customized for the respective login. Versus Checkpoint, you went to a screen and you had to actually go into the federal tax area. So it knows that my account is associated with the federal tax, and that's why it brings up federal tax, international tax, these elements. It goes right directly to that. You can always go to practice areas here, and you can change your practice area respective to that area as well. Now, I'm not going to click on a lot of these things because for 2 reasons. One, again, as I mentioned earlier, Checkpoint, which that video, I recommended you watch that video earlier. Checkpoint is a lot more commonly used in tax practice. CCH is still common, it's still popular, but much more so Checkpoint. That's why I went in much more depth with the Checkpoint video. So I'm not going to go in as much depth just because I'm going through 3 different databases to keep time's sake. And this is true for all 3 databases, by the way, that we're looking at today in this video. The second is, my university, I don't have a full, I don't have all the different bells and whistles that you can get with this. I don't even have most of the editorial content, but it's still the same layout to help you understand. So as you can see, the structure is much different than what you see with Checkpoint. It looks, you got a lot of your search items in Checkpoint were all over the place. In CCH, it's over here on the left. Everything is broken up here on the left. You've got, let's just start. We have our keyword search up here, okay, which you can select anything over here. If you want to select all federal tax, it tells you just selected a box. I'm actually in here going through this incognito to show you what it would look like if you were brand new, and it kind of guides you like you saw that. We can drill down for federal tax. We could go into secondary materials, which I don't really have on here. I have the federal tax practice tools, so I have that. You can select, that's obviously editorial content. You've got the primary sources, so if we wanted to search the intro revenue code, you've got the current intro revenue code, you could search all these, that's how you select that. But your keyword search is here. Now, before we look at the keyword search in more depth, I just want to look, we have product launch, document tray, history, save searches. Again, it ties all that to your account, practice areas, preference. So this is really a lot of this is tied to your respective account. And this could change in the future, the layout of things, but the idea is still the same. Now we have the keyword search area, which is what we're focusing on right now. And this is where you do your keyword search. So you have your search browse, selected content. You can search all content explanations, citations, all notes. So it does give you a little bit more on the front end, a little bit more ability to do certain things than Checkpoint did. Checkpoint, you could still select certain databases and get to a certain standpoint, and then after you got to the next screen, you could change things up. So I'm just have selected content here, and let's keep the code. Let's take off that, and you would put in your keyword search here, and let's just say we're searching for medical, the term medical. So, and just like with Checkpoint, it brings up items. So medical dental expenses, medical deduction. Let's just search medical dental expenses, and again, we have the intro revenue code selected. Let's see what happens. It keeps over here on the left. You can make that smaller, make that bigger. You also have go back to the home screen there on these little tabs, browsing and medical deduction, dental. So it opens up a new tab. That's the auto default, and it has these items here. Again, we had selected the intro revenue code. It's sorting by relevance. Also, you can sort by most recent. Most likely, you're looking for relevance. However, if you're looking for a recent case or a ruling or something, you can also look for more recent. For example, if there's a new area of law that's relevant. You can also filter by date range. You can jump to laws, legislative documents, collapse, expand. A lot of similar items that you have in Checkpoint. So we're under relevance, and the first thing that comes up is section 213, and that's exactly what we wanted. So we can click on that, and we're able to actually go through and read that respective item. And then you have related information, IRC history, regulations, current developments. Just like in Checkpoint, you've got these little boxes. You can click on those. Now again, because I don't have all the bells and whistles, I don't have the tax research consultant, I don't have the secondary sources, it's going to be just like Checkpoint in that regard, where you would have the tax research consultant pull up, like the federal tax coordinator has a link on the code section as well. So we can go back to that. Again, you have these nice handy tabs. Some people, they like that ability to keep those tabs open. It's a little bit different than Checkpoint. I prefer that approach, but again, Checkpoint, I'm just so used to using Checkpoint and the structure, okay? So that's really how you would search. Let's go back to our home, and this is again the home page, and let's go to the advanced search. So if we go to advanced search, you bring up this, and you notice that with Checkpoint, you've got the terms and connector search and the intuitive natural language search. You don't really have that here. However, it does give you the advanced search, which you can apply a thesaurus. You can do synonym lookup. So if we wanted to search the word medical, Let's see if anything comes up. View synonyms. No synonyms found as well. Uh, um, here's deduction. So it's not like a traditional. It's not like a traditional thesaurus or a synonym lookup online. It's just focusing on tax items like deduction, deduct, deductibility, deduction, deductible, deducting. So as you can see, there's some limitation there, and as you're seeing as I'm going through this, I'm also learning as I'm going with these items. Again, I'm not as familiar with CCH, but you're seeing that it might not be as intuitive to use as maybe Checkpoint is. So you're starting to see some of the advantages and disadvantages of items. That's why I really like that natural language, that intuitive search, and Checkpoint. And here it's more of a terms of connectors, a Boolean connectors, and those items. You can break it down by date, by court. You can if you're looking for a specific court, you're looking for U.S. Supreme Court, for a specific district court, specific state court. Even if you're dealing with state issues, you're looking for a specific circuit, and you can do this within Checkpoint as well. It's just not as clear. You have to break it down after you get into the actual search itself, but you can do that from the advanced search here on that element. Okay, so that's really the keyword search. Let's talk about other types of searches. So the citation search here under citations, and this is where I talked in the video about the toolbar. This is your toolbar here. You've got citations, and then you're going to have a citator, which you'll have another item that says citator. I don't have that here because, again, it's not part of my subscription, my university subscription. But you would have citation and then citator. Citation is where you get the citation type search. Citator is the citator that CCH has. Okay. And you can also access the citator on the actual cases and the authority as well. It's not just found on the toolbar. So under citations, let's just say that we're looking for, we're going to put in a case, or you can go to the Internal Revenue Code. So you go to Internal Revenue Code, hey, I know that code section 213 deals with medical expenses. So you can pull that up and go right to section 213 directly that way. You don't have to go through a search way. You can also do the same thing for cases. So if we go back to citations and we go to cases, you can look up different cases, United States tax cases, and you've got Supreme Court, you've got the federal district and the Circuit Court of Appeals. You've got all these you can put in the citation. You got the official reporters. You've also got the different CCH unofficial reporters as well. So that would be the citation search. Again, very similar to what we have in Checkpoint. Let's take a look more now. Let's do a topical search. Let's do a content search. We'll do index search later, but let's do a content search. So to get to content search, what you're going to do is we're going to go federal tax. You're going to, let's say, go to Internal Revenue Code, and it just goes right here. It breaks down. It goes to the respective item right here. You just drill down, keep drilling down, continue on, and you can actually get to section 1 just like that. Boom. So you can actually get to the content search over here on the left. Another way is you can go to titles A through Z, and you can pull up the various items. So let's say that we wanted to pull up the Internal Revenue Code, which is right here. You click on that, and it actually brings it up over here on the left, just like that. So if you went to another thing, Chief Counsel Advice Memorandum, it basically, everything links you over to the left. They really want you to use that left side so you can see what's over here, and you could drill down and browse the entire list of documents in the right pane, so then it brings it up here, and you're able to go through. With this respective item for the Chief Counsel, it's not as broken down as is for the code and the secondary sources, but you can see with the content search, it breaks it down by the respective content as you see here. So if we wanted to drill down with these items, you have that. So depending on what you like, do you like having the left and right? Because some people do like that. They like having the two elements open, and I think that could be very useful for certain types of research. That's how you get to the content search. So now let's go to the home. Let's close out everything. Let's close out all of these. Continue closing, I would ask you, say don't display this again, because I did incognito. It's like I'm going in for the first time. Let's just close everything out. So we're going to go federal tax. Again, close everything out. And we'll go to primary sources. Continue closing. And let's look at topical indexes. So now I've shown you how to do a keyword search. I've shown you how to do citation search. I've shown you how to do a content search. And now you have a topical search. So topical indexes, final and temporary regulations, topical index proposed. So I don't have, again, the secondary source. I know I keep saying that because, again, my subscription is limited. But I do have the primary sources, and we do have topical indexes for those. So index for final and temporary regulations under the 1986 code, and it breaks it down by topic. So let's say we were looking for something, let's say we're looking for medical expenses. So then right here, we have M. So you go down, and you're not going to have so many different things because we're only looking at the regs. But if you had secondary sources, you'd have a lot more M's. And let's see if we can find, okay, medical. So medical expenses, 1.213-1, and dependents, 1.213-1, health savings accounts. So all these things are under medical. Again, if you're doing a secondary source, you're going to have a lot more M's, just like we saw in the checkpoint video. So that's really everything when it comes to CCH. Again, there's a lot of similarities with respect to checkpoint. The other thing I would say is that if you are looking in checkpoint, look at these tools. These tools are unique to CCH other than the citations and CITATOR, which, again, the CITATOR I don't have, but it's very similar to the CITATOR that checkpoint has, with the difference in the language, that's the wording. But you have research folders, you can save your work, tools and smart charts. That can be very helpful. I know that in practice, people have used CCH. They told me that the tools and smart charts very helpful. You've got client news, all these different items, IRS FAQs. Just very helpful. It opens up an IRS FAQ page. Okay, so that's really CCH. Now I want to go and move on to Bloomberg BNA. So this is what it looks like. Again, if you're looking at this in the future, it looks a little different. The idea is still the same. Now, there's really one major thing that Bloomberg BNA is known for, and that is the BNA portfolios, which, as you can see, I have federal, so you can change the practice area. So this is Bloomberg Law, specifically tax, which is the subscription I have. And the BNA portfolios are very helpful. These are like treatises, extremely helpful. I'm going to actually go through one of them with you. So let's just type in choice of entity like it gives as the example. That's a very common one. It starts typing it. So we'll go to the 701, the first one. And it basically breaks this down. And this is a treatise. And you can search within these things. You could search the entire, you could search specific areas of the portfolio. So if you want to really get through the main meat of it, that's this detailed analysis. And if we're looking for check the box regs, check the box type, and it actually, a search suggestion that comes in, you can actually search that. Now, again, we have an advanced type search, just like we had with CCH, and it pulls it up. We're just searching that respective area. So if we went to advanced, let's just see what happens there, which is going to be the advanced type search. It actually breaks down the areas that you could be searching. So the different areas you could be searching, all right? So you go through and you do a selected source. It basically goes back. I know we had earlier, we were searching within the respective portfolio, that 701, 700 first, that respective, or 701 the first portfolio and 701, but you now go back and you can select certain things. So it has that ability, and you can include all word variations here. And again, that's kind of like what you have with the CCH and checkpoint with the synonym type approach. We saw though in the CCH, it's kind of limited in that regard. Now, we're going to go back. Let's go back to the main page. The portfolios, again, very helpful. So you can actually drill down. You've got a contents type approach. You've got a table of contents. You can search through it. So you can do keyword searches. You can do contents. You can do index. You can do citation, and all these different types. And this is what a BNA portfolio looks like. Again, it's like a treatise. It does link you to other things. Like if it does give you a code section, a public law number, other BNA portfolios, it links you within the respective area. It links you to cases. Again, it's all these tax research databases, they all do similar, they have similar benefits. They're linking you to other sources, so it provides a lot of benefit in itself. And this is a very popular portfolio. You'll see that some areas, the BNA portfolios are extremely helpful and extremely useful in terms of elements. The choice of entity is one of them. Okay, so let's go back to the homepage. That's really the main use of BNA. Most people use CCH or Checkpoint or Westlaw to do research, but then the BNA portfolios, they come here for those items. Now you can do research in Bloomberg BNA. Again, it's not just like the difference between Checkpoint and CCH. There's differences in the structure. I would say that there's not as much with respect to the searching and the editorial other than the portfolios. And again, you have the ability to link and whatnot. Other than the portfolios, I use Bloomberg BNA for some of these featured topics for these roadmaps. These roadmaps are really helpful because, for example, at the time I'm filming the video, is coronavirus, COVID type resources. And they give you these, whenever I need to do a presentation or learn a new area, I always go to Bloomberg BNA. They do an excellent job with giving you kind of a update of the law, and it links you to the sources and whatnot, and it kind of tells you like, oh, what the updates in the law are. So, for example, if a new tax bill comes out, it will say like the old law versus the new law. And that's what I love to use these roadmaps. They're excellent. They are an excellent source. If you are at a firm where you have access to Bloomberg BNA, I highly recommend using this when you're learning tax law. It helps you tremendously. So you've got the Tax Reform Guidance Watch, which gives you specific issues, but I want to go to the Tax Reform Guidance Roadmap. So this is what I was talking about. It gives you a roadmap that compares the guidance in the respective topic, and you'll see that it kind of explains what changed. It talks about the release date, IRC section, and then when a new law comes out, it compares old law and new law and say, okay, what changed? What was the old law for that specific provision, and what is the new change? It will do that, and that's extremely helpful because that's one way that I like to learn is I like to look at what was the old version, what was the new version. That's very, very helpful. Very helpful service there. In addition, there's some practice areas where BNA Bloomberg, they provide books and treatises that maybe some of the other services don't. For example, I know the insurance tax industry at a firm that I've worked at, they do some insurance tax, and right here they have federal income taxation of insurance companies. That's very helpful for insurance type issues. Not all the tax research services, they have editorial content in that area, so I like to use that. So that really just shows you kind of what the benefits of Bloomberg are. Again, if you're doing the traditional tax research, I don't really recommend Bloomberg BNA. You can do it, but it's not as powerful, I would say, as CCH, Checkpoint, Westlaw, Lexis. I think those are more the traditional ones when you're doing traditional tax research. But if you're trying to learn an area of law or get a treatise, Bloomberg BNA is one of the top areas, definitely, for sure. So now I want to talk about Westlaw. If you're a tax attorney or you're an attorney out there and you're learning about tax, this is probably what you're going to be using, Westlaw or Lexis, not Checkpoint, not CCH, although those are still useful, not Bloomberg BNA. You're probably going to be using Westlaw. And of all the different tax research databases, this is easily the most powerful. So this is what it looks like when you go into the Westlaw page. And again, I'm just going to show you kind of what it's like, the types of things. We're going to go through maybe a case, and I'll show you the CITATOR to show you how good the CITATOR is in Westlaw. And the reason why it's so powerful, Westlaw and Lexis, because these deal with all areas of law. So if you're doing state and local tax, international tax, you got to look up the laws of a country. You should come here. And you've got practice areas. It's not just tax. You've got all these different types of practice areas. Of course, we're dealing with tax. We're going to click on tax, and we're going to go through the respective areas that we have available. We've got cases. We've got Internal Revenue Code. You can look at all this stuff. You also have WG&L, and depending on your subscription, you're going to have certain WG&L treatises that Checkpoint might not have. By the way, it's Thomson Reuters. So Westlaw is owned by Thomson Reuters. Checkpoint is also owned by Thomson Reuters. CCH is CCH, right? That's not part of Thomson Reuters. But the idea is that Westlaw and Checkpoint are somewhat connected. And that's why the WG&L treatises are also in Westlaw. Okay. There's actually more WG&L treatises usually available, but you can customize in Checkpoint. So you've got some tools in here, and pretty much everything in Checkpoint you can do in here and more. Everything in CCH you can do in here except for those editorial materials, but they have the equivalent here. So you can find pretty much anything in Checkpoint you can find in here as well. Now, they've got this thing called the key site. That's being able to link through and also look at a respective, the citator, look through the respective item. So let's just look up a case. And I'm actually going to search all content, and it uses this intuitive type approach. I'm not going to go into the search specifics, but it's very similar to Checkpoint in terms of searching and also the advanced features, all that stuff. Let's just say we're searching for the Glenshaw Glass case. So it brings up all these things, Commissioner versus Glenshaw Glass. It brings up the U.S. Supreme Court case first. And we're going to go to that case, and you can get the original image. This is just so powerful. And if you're an attorney, I mean, you can pull up the original image of the case. Sometimes different tax professionals, they want to see the original from the official reporter, from the U.S. Supreme Court reporter. They actually want to see that. I mean, I'm not that much of a stickler, but some people, they like that. You've got West Head Notes, so it brings up all the head notes. You've got the key site system that's talking about. You've got the attorneys and law firms. It links all that stuff, opinion. It breaks down all these things, all citations, footnotes. Again, the main driver here is really the, because for attorneys, it really is the case law aspect of Westlaw, but you also have code, you have regs, you have all that stuff. You've got filings, so you can see the original briefs that were filed and those things. Obviously, newer cases, you have more access to that stuff. So you can see the reply brief for petitioner. You have all this stuff that you don't have access in Checkpoint. You can see negative treatment. You can see what case, where negative treatment was provided. So specifically, so in the Beamer case, they distinguished the Glenshaw Glass decision from the facts at hand. Most negative, distinguished by a red flag, means that it's no longer good law. Yellow means caution. So you got the yellow, think of it like a red light, green light, yellow light, right? Green light, it's good to go. History. So history actually shows you the history of the case, and this is kind of where I like to talk about some things. So we can zoom in, you're going to have to scroll around. It says the trial court, and you've got these two cases, both red meaning that they've been overturned or they're not good law anymore. Then you've got the intermediate court, which is the Third Circuit Court of Appeals for those two cases, and then search is granted, and it gives you the site for that, and then it gives you the Supreme Court case, which is yellow because it is cautioning you. Again, everything below that was red because it's been overruled. And then finally, we have the rehearing denied by the Supreme Court. That's the last thing you see up there in the top corner. It was denied by rehearing. So that goes through the history, and I find that this approach very helpful because it is a visual approach and very, very helpful. We have also the citing references. Look at that. It has 1,100 cases, so it breaks down all of these things. Cases that I've really cited, there's over 1,000 cases that I've cited. So wow, look at all that. And it gives you the depth where it used that case, head note, all these different things. Look how strong, look at this. This is something, right? This is something crazy. So over 3,000 citing references. You've got over 1,000 cases. Then you've got all these documents. You've got appellate, briefs and whatnot that are part of it as well. Table of authorities. It provides the different authorities. And this is all part of the key site system. So the key site system, actually the citator that it deals with, of other cases. And table authorities, it talks about, in the case, it provides the cases that actually were relied upon in the case itself. That's the table of authorities. So in the actual Glenshaw Glass decision, you will see these cases mentioned or cited in the case and discussed. So it gives you cited, it gives you judgment reversed. That's obviously referencing the lower court, talking about that thing, the treatment, what it did in that case. So look at this, right? This just shows you, and this is also similar in LexisNexis. It just shows you that if you want the best citators by far are going to be in Westlaw and Lexis, because look how much more in depth they go compared to in Checkpoint and CCH. Again, if you're just doing tax research though, a citator, the ones that are in Checkpoint and CCH are good. They're good enough for what you need. But if you really need like the next level, come here to Westlaw or Lexis. So that's really everything I wanted to show. Again, Westlaw has just about everything in it that you can do with CCH and Checkpoint. Again, the only differences are the types of editorial materials, right? You got CCH with the tax research consultant. You got Bloomberg BNA. Those aren't available in Westlaw per se, so you can't get those. You have to go to those respective tax research databases to get that material. But other than that, searching primary sources, the availability of editorial materials, treatises, it's got everything, all the bells and whistles. All right. So that's really everything I want you to see. If you're in my course, you're taking my tax research course, again, I'm only going to really test you on the slides regarding the CCH just because there are some professionals out there that make you expect you to know CCH coming in. With respect to Bloomberg BNA, again, the portfolios are really the focus. And then Westlaw, I'm just showing you how in law practice, this is what's usually used. And the idea, if you're an attorney, is you're usually using Westlaw or Lexis, and it just shows you how powerful, how much more powerful these are compared to even viewing Checkpoint, which is already powerful.